The DNA test results sat on his desk like a loaded gun. Big Boss Darius stared at the envelope for the third time that morning, his coffee going cold in a cup that cost more than most people's monthly rent. 58 years of building an empire, of moving through power circles like a king, of knowing every angle before it was played, and nothing had prepared him for this. The woman sleeping upstairs in his Buckhead mansion wasn't who she claimed to be. Her name wasn't even real. But here was the twist that had his lawyers, his security team, and even his closest confidant, Jerome, sweating. The baby she was carrying was his. Confirmed. Undeniable. His first child at 63, conceived with a woman whose entire existence was a carefully constructed lie. "Boss, we got a problem." Jerome's voice crackled through his phone. Her real family just landed at Hartsfield-Jackson. Private jet, 6 passengers. And Darius, they ain't coming for a baby shower. Through the windows of his study, Atlanta sprawled beneath him like a kingdom he'd spent decades conquering. Real estate, legitimate businesses with less legitimate connections, influence that reached from City Hall to the highest levels of Georgia society, respect purchased with wisdom, strategy, and the kind of power that never needed to announce itself. But none of that mattered right now, because the woman upstairs, the one who'd whispered, "Don't let me go," in his arms just hours ago, whose laughter had cracked through walls he'd built for decades, who was 7 months pregnant with his legacy, had been running from something, or someone. And whatever it was had just caught up to both of them. His phone buzzed again. A text from his head of security. They're armed, professional, and they're asking questions about her at the Four Seasons. Darius set down his coffee and straightened his Tom Ford suit jacket. Outside, the November Atlanta morning was crisp, the kind of weather that made the city feel alive with possibility. Inside, he could hear her moving upstairs, probably reaching for him, wondering why he'd left their bed before dawn. She had no idea what was coming. Neither did they. Because there was one thing Darius Kincaid Monroe had learned in 6 decades of playing chess while others played checkers. You don't touch what belongs to Big Boss Darius. Not his empire, not his legacy, and damn sure not the mother of his child, lies or no lies. The game was about to change. Listen, before we go any further into this situation that's about to explode, I need you to subscribe. Hit that button right now. Because what happens next with Big Boss Darius, this mysterious woman, and the dangerous people hunting her down, you're not going to want to miss a single moment. I promise you, this story is different. Now let's get back to Atlanta, where Darius is about to make moves that'll remind everyone why they call him Big Boss. Her name, or at least the name she'd given him, was Simone Olivia Laurent, French-Haitian heritage, or so she'd said. An art curator who'd walked into his private charity gala at the High Museum 6 months ago wearing a midnight blue gown that made every other woman in the room disappear. Darius remembered that night with crystal clarity. He'd been standing near the Romer Bearden collection, nursing his second glass of bourbon, half listening to another politician pitch him on some infrastructure deal. Then she'd appeared beside him, studying the artwork with genuine intensity. Bearden understood that black excellence isn't about perfection, she'd said without looking at him. It's about the beautiful complexity of our contradictions. Most women approached him with rehearsed lines about his success, his lifestyle, his reputation. She'd approached him with art theory and hadn't even asked his name. He was hooked before dessert was served. The courtship had been different from anything in his past. Darius had been married once, decades ago, before the empire, before the real power crystallized. That had ended amicably. She'd wanted simple, he'd become extraordinary. Since then, there had been companionship, sophisticated arrangements, elegant women who understood the game. Simone was supposed to be different, and maybe that was the first warning sign he'd ignored. She'd moved into his Buckhead estate 3 months ago, after he'd returned from a business trip to Dubai to find her apartment burglarized, her car vandalized. He'd offered protection one of his penthouses. Security. Distance. She'd asked to be close to him instead. "Don't let me go," she'd whispered that first night in his home. wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than her monthly salary. "Promise me you won't let me go," he'd promised. Darius Kincaid Monroe didn't make promises lightly. The pregnancy was discovered 5 weeks later. Unplanned, but not unwelcome. At 63, Darius had long ago accepted he might never have children. His lifestyle, his connections, the shadow of danger that occasionally crossed his world, it hadn't seemed fair to bring a child into that. But holding that positive test in Simone's trembling hands, watching tears stream down her face as she asked if he was angry, something had shifted in his chest. A fortress wall he didn't know existed had crumbled. Angry? He'd pulled her close, inhaling her jasmine perfume. "Baby girl, I'm terrified and thrilled and already planning the nursery." That was 4 months ago. Now, standing in his study with DNA results that confirmed paternity and a background check that confirmed deception, Darius felt that old survival instinct kick in, the one that had kept him alive and powerful through decades of navigating dangerous waters. Jerome knocked twice before entering, a courtesy that announced urgency without disrespect. His oldest friend, his most trusted advisor, the brother he'd chosen rather than been born with. Jerome had been there from the beginning, when they were 2 kids from the West End with more ambition than sense. "Talk to me," Darius said, not turning from the window. "Her real name is Simone Dubois, family out of New Orleans, old money, old power, old secrets. The kind of Louisiana royalty that makes our Atlanta influence look brand new." Jerome set a tablet on the desk, photos and documents filling the screen. "Her father is Philippe Dubois. Heard of him?" Darius had, vaguely, New Orleans elite, connections that ran deep into Louisiana politics and deeper into things that weren't discussed in polite company. The kind of family that smiled at charity events and buried their problems in the bayou. "She ran away 8 months ago," Jerome continued, "right around the time she met you. Her family's been looking quiet-like ever since. Private investigators, off-the-books inquiries, nothing loud enough to attract attention. Until now. Until now. The pregnancy changed things. Somebody talked, probably medical records got flagged somehow. And Philippe Dubois just mobilized." Jerome's expression was grim. "Boss, these aren't people who negotiate. They're people who collect what they consider theirs. She's not property. Try telling them that. They see a runaway daughter, pregnant, living with a man they probably see as—" Jerome hesitated. "As what?" "Say it. As someone who took advantage. An older man, powerful, different social circle. They're not going to see this as love, Darius. They're going to see this as theft." Darius finally turned from the window, his expression hardening into something that reminded Jerome why people crossed the street when Big Boss Darius walked by, not from fear of violence, but from recognition of immovable force. "Then they need better vision," Darius said quietly. "Because that woman upstairs is mine. That child is mine, and I don't give back what I love. She lied to you. She ran from something. There's a difference." Darius picked up the DNA results, studied them again. "People don't construct entirely new identities over family disagreements, Jerome. They do it when they're escaping something worse, or hiding something worse." It was the thought that had kept Darius awake all night, watching Simone sleep, her hand resting on the swell of their growing child. What was she running from? And had he just painted a target on both their backs by falling in love with her? His phone buzzed. Text from Tristan, his head of security. "Dubois family checked into 4 Seasons. Father, 2 brothers, family attorney, and 2 men who are definitely not lawyers. They're making calls, asking about you now, not just her." "How long before they show up here?" Darius asked. Jerome checked his watch. "Knowing how these things go, they'll try the polite approach first. Expect a call within the hour, requesting a meeting. All civil, all respectful. And if I decline, then they'll remind you how uncivilized they can be." Footsteps on the stairs pulled both men's attention. Simone appeared in the doorway, wearing one of Darius's dress shirts that hung like a silk tent over her pregnant belly, her natural hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked beautiful and young and terrified. "You know," she said simply. "Not a question." Darius studied her, really looked at her for the first time since opening that envelope. The fear in her eyes wasn't new, he realized. It had always been there, hiding behind laughter and passion and whispered promises. He'd just been too intoxicated by her to see it clearly. "I know your real name," he said carefully. "I know your family is in Atlanta. I know you've been running. What I don't know is why." She sagged against the doorframe, one hand protectively cradling her stomach. "If I tell you, you'll send me back. Baby girl, I don't send away what I choose to keep. But I need truth. All of it. Right now." Jerome moved toward the door. "I'll give you too some privacy." "Stay," Simone said quickly. "You should hear this too. You're going to need to know." She moved into the room, settling carefully into the leather chair across from Darius's desk. The morning light caught her face, highlighting the exhaustion she'd been hiding. "My father isn't just wealthy. He's connected. Old Louisiana families, they're not like new money. They have history, tradition, expectations." "I understand expectations," Darius said. "Not these kind." Her voice cracked. "When I was 21, I was promised. Like property, like a business merger. My father arranged my marriage to a man named Claude Rousseau. Another old family. Connections that would strengthen my father's position." Jerome and Darius exchanged glances. Arranged marriages weren't unheard of in certain circles, but in modern America, among the supposedly sophisticated elite, "I was supposed to marry him 5 years ago," Simone continued. "I said no. I ran the first time. Made it to New York. They found me in 3 days. Brought me home. My father, he didn't hurt me, but he made it clear that my choices weren't my own, that I was a Dubois before I was a person." "And Claude?" Darius asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Claude was patient, obsessively patient. He said he could wait for me to accept reality, that I'd learn to love the cage as long as it was gilded enough." She looked up, tears streaming. "So I tried to kill myself." The room went silent, except for the distant sound of Atlanta traffic. "I took pills. Enough to mean it. My mother found me, called a private doctor, kept it quiet. When I woke up 3 days later, I thought maybe they'd understand. Maybe almost losing me would change things." "It didn't," Jerome said softly. "It didn't. My father was angry that I'd tried to embarrass the family. Claude sent flowers and said we'd work through my episode together, like I was broken, not trapped." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "So 8 months ago, I planned better. I took money I'd hidden, documents, created a new identity. I bought my freedom with every resource I could steal, and I ran to Atlanta because it was far enough from New Orleans but close enough to feel like home. And then you met me," Darius said. "Then I met you, and everything I'd planned changed." She stood, moving to him, placing both hands on his chest. "I was supposed to stay invisible, build a small, quiet life, maybe move to Seattle or Portland eventually. But you," her voice softened, "you were everything I didn't know I needed. Power that protected instead of imprisoned, wealth that gave instead of controlled, and when I found out I was pregnant, you knew they'd come." Darius finished. "I knew Philippe Dubois wouldn't let his grandchild be raised by a man he doesn't control. And Claude," she shuddered, "Claude still considers me his. My father still considers this marriage a done deal, just delayed." Darius pulled her close, careful of her belly, his mind already working through angles and strategies. "How bad is Claude? He's never hit me. He's never had to. His family has enough power in Louisiana that the law bends around them. People who cross the Roussillons have accidents, lose businesses, find themselves facing charges that stick. It's all very clean, very legal-looking." "So he's like me," Darius said. "Just without the conscience." Jerome's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at Darius. They're calling. Your office line. The three of them stared at the phone on Darius's desk as it began to ring. Darius let it ring 4 times before answering, putting it on speaker. His voice was cordial, warm, even the tone of a man who didn't yet know he was supposed to be threatened. This is Darius Monroe. Mr. Monroe. Philippe Dubois. The voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of Creole accent underneath. The kind of voice that had negotiated oil deals and political appointments. I apologize for the early call. I'm hoping we might arrange a meeting. A conversation between gentlemen about a delicate family matter. I'm listening. Perhaps in person would be more appropriate. I'm at the Four Seasons. I can come to you, or you're welcome here. Whatever makes you comfortable. The phrasing wasn't accidental. Whatever makes you comfortable was a power play disguised as courtesy, implying that Darius might be uncomfortable, might need accommodation, might be the weaker party in this negotiation. Simone's hand tightened on his arm. He covered it with his own. The Four Seasons is lovely this time of year, Darius said. I'll meet you for lunch. 12:30, their restaurant. Perhaps somewhere more private. I prefer public spaces for first meetings, Mr. Dubois. Keeps everyone honest and polite. Darius smiled, though Dubois couldn't see it. I'll see you at 12:30. He ended the call before Dubois could respond. Public was smart, Jerome said. Harder for them to make threats or scenes with witnesses. That's the point. First meeting is about taking measure. He wants to intimidate. I want to demonstrate I'm not someone who intimidates easily. Darius turned to Simone. You're staying here. Tristan and his team will be with you every second. Darius. This is not negotiable, baby girl. I need to know you and our child are safe while I handle this. Can you give me that? She nodded reluctantly. He'll try to make you see me as damaged goods, as a runaway child who needs to be returned to her family. Then he fundamentally misunderstands who he's talking to. Darius kissed her forehead. I've been building empires since before you were born. I've negotiated with people who make the Dubois family look like amateurs, and I've never lost what I decided to keep. 3 hours later, Darius walked into the Four Seasons restaurant, looking like exactly what he was. Power in a perfectly tailored suit. Jerome walked 3 steps behind, close enough to matter, far enough to show respect for the meeting's veneer of civility. Philippe Dubois sat at a corner table, and Darius had to admit the man had presence. Early 70s, silver-haired, with the kind of weathered elegance that came from generations of breeding and privilege. He stood as Darius approached, extending a hand. Mr. Monroe, thank you for meeting me. Mr. Dubois. Darius's handshake was firm, measuring. This is Jerome Williams, my associate. 2 other men flanked Dubois, his sons, clearly, both younger versions of their father, carrying themselves with the casual arrogance of men who'd never been told no. The attorney sat to the side, a thin man with calculating eyes. They ordered. Darius chose the salmon, Dubois the steak, and made small talk about Atlanta's growth, the unseasonable weather, the upcoming holidays. All surface-level chess moves, while both sides evaluated the board. Finally, after the appetizers arrived, Dubois set down his fork and got to business. Mr. Monroe, I believe you're currently housing my daughter. I'm currently sharing my home with Simone Laurent, Darius corrected. A grown woman who made that choice of her own free will. Simone Dubois, Philippe corrected back. And I'm afraid her choices have been complicated lately. You may not be aware of her history, her struggles. I'm aware she ran from a situation she found intolerable. She ran from family who loves her, from a man who wishes to marry her, from responsibilities and obligations she chose to abandon. Philippe's voice remained calm, reasonable. Mr. Monroe, I'm sure you understand family expectations. Legacy. The weight of building something that outlasts us. I understand it perfectly. Then you understand that Simone was raised with certain understandings. Agreements were made, commitments undertaken. Her marriage to Claude Rousseau has been planned for years. It's not merely personal, it's a union of families, of resources, of shared vision for Louisiana's future. Darius sipped his water, his expression unreadable. You're describing a business merger, not a marriage. The best marriages are both. Dubois leaned forward slightly. I've done my research on you, Mr. Monroe. You're a remarkable man. Self-made, influential, respected. You've built something extraordinary from nothing. I admire that enormously. I sense a but coming. But you're also 63 years old, while my daughter is 31. You move in circles that have, let's say, complexities that might not be appropriate for a young woman about to become a mother. Dubois' eyes hardened slightly. And you've convinced her to carry your child. I've convinced her of nothing. Darius's voice cut like surgical steel, quiet but absolute. Simone became pregnant. We're both adults who made adult choices. And that child is mine, legally and biologically. I have documentation. One of the sons leaned forward aggressively, but Dubois raised a hand, stopping him. Mr. Monroe, I'm trying to be respectful here, to find a reasonable solution that works for everyone. Then let me save us both time. Darius set down his fork, giving Dubois his complete attention. Simone has told me about Claude Rousseau, about the arranged marriage she didn't want, about what happened when she refused, about why she ran. She's told you her version. I believe her version because I've seen the fear in her eyes, Mr. Dubois. Real fear. The kind that comes from genuine trauma, not teenage rebellion. Darius paused. So here's my position. Simone stays with me. Our child will be raised by both of us. She's welcome to have a relationship with her family if she chooses, but there will be no marriage to Claude Rousseau, no return to New Orleans, no capitulation to arrangements made without her genuine consent. The table went silent. The attorney whispered something to Dubois, who waved him off. And if I told you this isn't negotiable? Philippe asked softly. Then we'd both be wasting our lunch. Darius smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Mr. Dubois, I respect family. I respect tradition. But I don't respect cages, even golden ones. Your daughter is an adult woman carrying my child. Those are facts that supersede whatever arrangements you made when she was too young to protest them. You have no idea what you're interfering with. Then educate me. Philippe studied him for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. The Rousseau family isn't just wealthy, Mr. Monroe. They have roots in Louisiana that go back 200 years. They have influence in state government, in local law enforcement, in business communities from Baton Rouge to the Gulf. Claude Rousseau specifically has been very patient about Simone's reluctance. But patience has limits. Is that a threat? It's context. Claude considers Simone his fiancée. He considers this pregnancy an unfortunate complication that can be managed, and he has the resources to make that management very comprehensive. Jerome shifted slightly beside Darius, a warning stance that didn't go unnoticed. Let me provide you some context in return, Darius said quietly. I've been navigating power structures in this city for 40 years. I have relationships that span from City Hall to the State House to boardrooms across the Southeast. I've built legitimate businesses and I've solved illegitimate problems, all while maintaining a reputation for fairness and for protecting what's mine. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. So, if Claude Rousseau or anyone else decides to make this pregnancy a complication to be managed, they'll discover that managing complications is something I'm extraordinarily good at, and I'm significantly less patient than Claude. One of the sons, the younger one, stood abruptly. You can't talk to our father like— Sit down, Matthew, Philippe said tiredly. Mr. Monroe is simply establishing his position. As am I. He turned back to Darius. You're making this adversarial when it doesn't need to be. You're trying to reclaim a woman who doesn't want to be reclaimed. That made it adversarial before I ever entered the picture. She's confused, traumatized perhaps. The suicide attempt was a desperate act by a desperate woman trapped in a situation she found unbearable, Darius interrupted. And the fact that your response was to keep pushing for the same marriage tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. Philippe's composure finally cracked slightly. You don't know what you're protecting her from. Then tell me. But Dubois just shook his head, standing. This conversation is over. Mr. Monroe, I'm giving you 48 hours to reconsider your position. After that, this situation will resolve itself in ways you may not find comfortable. Mr. Dubois, I've been uncomfortable before. It doesn't move me as much as you might hope. Darius remained seated, a power play of his own. But I'll give you some advice in return. Don't underestimate what a man my age will do to protect his family. We've learned that time is too precious to waste on half measures. The Dubois family left without another word. The attorney looking back once with an expression that mixed warning and something that might have been respect. Jerome waited until they were out of earshot. Well, that went about as badly as it could have. No, Darius said, finishing his salmon. It went exactly as it needed to. Now they know I won't bend, and that means they'll either back off or escalate. Either way, we'll know what we're dealing with. You're betting Simone's safety on that read. I'm betting on 40 years of reading power players. Philippe Dubois is old school, but he's not stupid. He came here to negotiate, not to threaten. That means there's flexibility, even if he doesn't want to show it yet. Darius stood, adjusting his jacket. But just in case I'm wrong, double security at the house. And I want eyes on the Rousseau family, too. If Claude is in Atlanta, I want to know where and when. Already on it. Tristan has people tracking their movements. Jerome walked alongside him as they headed for the exit. Boss, what if this gets messy? Then it gets messy. But it gets messy on my terms, in my city, with my resources. Darius stepped into the Atlanta afternoon, the autumn sun warm on his face. Jerome, I've spent 6 decades becoming the man I am. I didn't do all that to roll over for Louisiana plantation politics and arranged marriage bullshit. His phone buzzed. Text from Tristan. Situation at the house. Simone's upset. You need to come home. They were in the car and moving before Jerome finished reading the message aloud. Darius found Simone in the nursery they'd been decorating together, a room that overlooked the Atlanta skyline, painted in soft neutrals because they wanted to be surprised by the baby's sex. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by baby clothes she'd pulled from the closet, tears streaming down her face. Baby girl, what happened? She held up her phone, and Darius felt his blood pressure spike. The screen showed a photo of her, taken through the window of his home. She was clearly visible in the living room, unaware she was being photographed. The message below read, "Come home, Simone, before innocent people get caught in the crossfire." "It's Claude," she whispered. "That's his number. He's here. He's watching." Tristan appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. We found 3 different surveillance positions around the property. Professional setup cameras, long-range lenses. They've been watching for at least 24 hours, maybe longer. We swept them. But if they got that close without you noticing, they can do it again, Darius finished. He knelt beside Simone, taking the phone from her trembling hands. "When did this come through?" "5 minutes ago, right after your meeting ended." "They're coordinating, Darius. My father meets with you while Claude reminds me that I'm not safe anywhere. You're safe with me." "Am I?" She gestured at the phone. "They got photos inside your home, inside a mansion with security that costs more than most people make in a year. If they can do that, what else can they do?" It was a valid question, one that made Darius feel something he rarely experienced. Doubt. Not about his capabilities or resources, but about whether this was a fight he could win without casualties. Jerome had been on his phone in the hallway. He stepped in now, his expression grave. "Boss, we got a problem. Claude Rousseau checked into the Mandarin Oriental 2 hours ago. But here's the interesting part. He's not alone. He's got 3 guys with him who showed up on our facial recognition software. Former private military contractors, guys who've worked security for some very questionable clients. He brought muscle," Tristan added, "professional muscle. Simone's breathing was becoming rapid, panic setting in. Darius pulled her close, feeling her heart racing against his chest. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "I need you to breathe, baby girl. For our baby. Can you do that?" She nodded, trying to slow her breathing. "Good. Now, listen carefully. Claude bringing professionals means he's serious, but it also means he's predictable. Men like that operate on intimidation, on making you believe they're more dangerous than they actually are. They are dangerous," she whispered. "You don't understand. In New Orleans, Claude's family doesn't face consequences. People who oppose them don't just lose, they disappear. Business partners who back out of deals find themselves bankrupt. Women who reject Claude's advances find their families under investigation. It's all very clean, all very legal-looking, but it's systematic destruction." "Simone, look at me." Darius tilted her chin up. "I'm not some business partner or rejected date. I'm a man who's been playing these games since before Claude was born. And this is my city, not his. Those rules he plays by in Louisiana, they don't apply here. You're underestimating him." "Maybe. Or maybe he's underestimating me." Darius stood, helping her up carefully. "But either way, we're not rolling over. Tristan, I want this house locked down tighter than the Federal Reserve. Jerome, call Vincent." Jerome's eyebrows shot up. "Vincent? Boss? Are you sure? I know what he is. That's why I'm calling him." Darius turned to Simone. "Vincent is someone I've known for 30 years. He handles problems that conventional solutions can't solve. And before you worry, he's not a thug or a killer. He's just very good at finding leverage." "What kind of leverage?" "The kind that makes powerful people reconsider their life choices." Over the next 3 hours, Darius's network activated in ways Simone had never witnessed. She'd known he was influential, wealthy, connected, but she hadn't understood the depth and breadth of what that meant. Vincent arrived first, a slim, elegant black man in his 50s, who looked more like a college professor than whatever Simone assumed someone with his reputation would look like. He spent 20 minutes in Darius's study, then left with a list of names and a timeline. Next came Adrienne, a woman Darius introduced as his information specialist. She set up in the dining room with 3 laptops and started pulling up financial records, property holdings, and business connections for both the Dubois and Rousseau families. "Money always tells a story," she said, her fingers flying across keyboards. "And these old Louisiana families? They keep their money in interesting places." By evening, a picture was emerging. The Rousseau family's influence in Louisiana wasn't just about legitimate business connections, it was about carefully laundered money from sources that would make federal prosecutors salivate. Oil leases acquired through questionable means. Real estate deals that involved displaced families and suspiciously timed fires. Political contributions that bordered on bribery. "Claude himself is surprisingly clean," Adrienne reported, "at least on paper. But his uncle, Antoine Rousseau, is a different story. He's the real power behind the family, and he's got connections to some genuinely nasty people. Drug trafficking money from the Gulf, relationships with cartels operating out of Houston and Miami. So, we go after the uncle, not Claude," Jerome suggested. "No," Darius said. "We use the uncle as leverage to make Claude back off. There's a difference." His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. "Mr. Monroe." Claude Rousseau's voice was younger than Philippe's, smoother, with an edge of arrogance underneath the politeness. "I thought we should speak directly. Man to man. I'm listening. I'm trying to understand your interest in this situation. Simone is a beautiful woman, certainly. And I understand the appeal of youth when one reaches a certain age. But surely you can see this is a temporary fascination. She's confused, running from commitment, using you as an escape. In 6 months, when the novelty wears off and the reality of a screaming infant sets in, you'll wish you'd made different choices. Darius felt Simone flinch beside him. He took her hand, squeezing gently. "Claude, let me be clear about something. I don't make temporary choices. When I commit to something, a business, a relationship, a child, I commit completely. That's how I've built everything I have. So your assessment of this situation is fundamentally flawed. Then let me be equally clear." Claude's voice hardened. "Simone was promised to me. Her family and mine have agreements that predate her current rebellion. That child she's carrying? It should be mine. And I'm prepared to ensure that the next child is—" "Meaning what?" "Meaning mistakes can be corrected, complications can be managed, and men who interfere in family matters sometimes discover that their other interests become vulnerable. I understand you have several major real estate developments in the works, investments in hospitality, partnerships with people who value stability and respectability. Are you threatening my businesses?" "I'm merely observing that reputations are fragile things, Mr. Monroe, especially for men who've built their empires on the edges of legitimacy. One comprehensive investigation into your holdings, your partnerships, your history, well, it would be unfortunate if things came to light that damaged everything you've built." The room had gone silent. Everyone was watching Darius, waiting for his response. He smiled, a dangerous expression that made even Jerome shift uncomfortably. "Claude, I'm going to give you one chance to walk away from this threat. Pretend this call never happened, and reconsider your entire approach. Because if you think you can investigate me without me investigating you back, you're playing a game you're not equipped to win." Big words from a black man who forgot his place. The line went dead. Darius had hung up. "Did he just—" Jerome started. "Yeah," Darius said quietly. "He went there. Good. Now I know exactly who I'm dealing with." Simone was shaking. "Darius, he's going to come after you. After everything you've built. And it's my fault." "Stop." His voice was firm but gentle. "This is not your fault. This is about men who think women are property and power is measured by control. And Claude just made his biggest mistake. He showed me his hand while I'm still holding mine." Vincent called 5 minutes later. "Boss, I've got something. Claude's uncle, Antoine, he's got a problem." "A big one. Federal agents have been building a case on some of his business dealings. Money laundering through seafood import companies, connections to trafficking operations. It's not public yet, but it's coming. Maybe 6 months out. Can we accelerate it? We can make sure the right evidence ends up in the right hands at the right time. But boss, if we do this, we're playing with fire. These aren't just rich assholes. The Russo family has legitimate criminal connections." "So do I," Darius said. "Mine just went to college." Simone grabbed his arm. "Darius, please. This is exactly what I was afraid of. I don't want you destroying your life to protect me." He turned to her, cupping her face in both hands. "Baby girl, let me explain something. I'm 63 years old. I've built an empire, made more money than I can spend, earned respect from everyone who matters. You know what I didn't have? A reason to build anything beyond myself. And then you walked into that museum, talked to me about Romer Bearden, and looked at me like I was a man instead of a reputation. Darius, I'm not finished. When you told me you were pregnant, something changed. For the first time in decades, I saw a future that mattered beyond the next deal or development. I saw legacy. Not just money or buildings, but a human legacy. My child. Our child." He kissed her forehead. "So no, I'm not going to let Claude Rousseau or Philippe Dubois or anyone else take that away. Not because I'm being noble or heroic, but because I'm being selfish. I want this life. I want you. I want our baby. And I'm willing to burn down anyone who tries to take it from me." The room erupted in coordinated chaos, phones ringing, laptops humming, people moving with purpose. Darius's team was activating fully, pulling every resource, calling in every favor, and in the Mandarin Oriental, Claude Rousseau was making his own calls, not yet realizing that he'd just declared war on a man who'd been winning wars since before Claude learned to walk. The next morning, two things happened simultaneously. First, Antoine Rousseau was arrested in New Orleans on federal money laundering charges. The evidence had appeared on a federal prosecutor's desk overnight: documents, financial records, recorded conversations that painted a clear picture of systematic criminal enterprise. The arrest made regional news, with cameras catching Antoine in handcuffs being led out of his uptown mansion. Second, Darius received a call from a mutual acquaintance, a federal judge in Louisiana, who owed him several favors from past campaigns. "Darius, what did you do?" Judge Carver sounded exhausted. "The Rousseau family is imploding. Antoine's arrest triggered investigations into their business holdings, their political contributions, their entire network. And the word is you're somehow involved. I simply made sure evidence of crimes reached the people who could act on it," Darius said calmly. "Is that a problem?" "It's a problem if you're doing this because of personal beef instead of justice. Can't it be both? Besides, Judge, weren't you just complaining last month about how the Rousseau family had too much influence in Louisiana courts? How justice couldn't be served because of their connections? I solved your problem." A long sigh. "Darius, be careful. These families don't forgive. They retaliate. Let them try. I'm not some small-time player they can intimidate into silence. That's what worries me. Two powerful forces colliding tends to create collateral damage." The judge was right to worry. By noon, Claude had checked out of the body, Mandarin Oriental. By 2 p.m., Philippe Dubois was on a flight back to New Orleans, recalled by a family crisis that made Simone's situation seem suddenly less urgent. But Claude didn't leave Atlanta. Tristan's team tracked him to a private residence in Buckhead, a high-end rental property 3 miles from Darius's estate. He'd dismissed his professional security, but that almost made it worse. A man with nothing to lose was more dangerous than a man operating with calculated strategy. "He's planning something," Tristan warned. "Man doesn't send his security home unless he's going off script." Simone had barely slept, jumping at every sound, convinced each phone call was news of violence or disaster. Darius tried to keep her calm, but he was preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. The confrontation came on the third night. Darius was in his study, reviewing contracts for a hotel development in Savannah, when the security system alerted him to someone at the front gate. The camera showed Claude Rousseau, alone, standing in the rain without an umbrella. "He's got balls, I'll give him that," Jerome muttered, watching the monitors. "Or a death wish," Tristan added. "Want me to send him away?" Darius studied the image. Claude looked different than his photos, suggested younger than 35, handsome in that privileged way. But there was something broken in his posture. This wasn't a man coming to fight. This was a man coming to plead. "Let him in. Search him first. And keep a team close, just in case." 5 minutes later, Claude Rousseau sat across from Darius in the same study where this had all begun. He was soaked from the rain, shivering slightly, looking nothing like the powerful scion of Louisiana royalty. "Thank you for seeing me," Claude said quietly. "You've got 5 minutes. Talk." "My uncle is in federal custody. My family is under investigation. Our political connections are severing ties. Banks are freezing accounts. In 72 hours, you've dismantled what took my family 3 generations to build." Claude's voice was hollow. "I underestimated you. Is that what you came to say? I came to ask you to stop. Please. My mother, my younger sister, they had nothing to do with any of this, but they're suffering because of the investigation you triggered." "I didn't trigger anything," Darius said. "I simply ensured that crimes that were being committed came to light. If your family is suffering, it's because of what they did, not what I did." "You think you're some kind of hero?" Claude's composure cracked. "You stole another man's fiancée. She was never yours. Not really. You can't steal what doesn't belong to someone. We had an agreement. You had an agreement with her father, not with her. And that's the fundamental problem with your entire worldview, Claude. You see women as property to be negotiated, not people with their own will." Claude stood abruptly, pacing. "You don't understand. I love her. I've loved Simone since we were teenagers. I've waited years for her, been patient while she went through her rebellion phase. And then he spun to face Darius. You're 63 years old. What are you going to give her? Another decade, maybe two, before you're too old to be a real father? Before health issues and mortality make her your caretaker instead of your partner? It was the one argument that had kept Darius awake at night, the one doubt that crept in during quiet moments. And Claude had struck directly at it. Maybe you're right, Darius said softly. Maybe I only have 10 or 15 good years left. Maybe my child will have an older father who can't run as fast or stay up as late. But you know what I will give them? A choice. Love that protects instead of imprisons. And a model of what it means to treat women as equals instead of acquisitions. She'll leave you eventually, when the money stops being impressive, when age becomes a burden instead of sophistication. Then she'll leave. And I'll survive, just like I've survived everything else life has thrown at me. But at least she'll have left because she wanted to, not because she was forced to stay. Claude sagged back into his chair, the fight draining out of him. I can't let her go. You never had her to let go. That's what you're not understanding. Footsteps on the stairs made both men turn. Simone appeared in the doorway, wrapped in one of Darius's robes, her pregnant belly prominent, her face pale but determined. Claude started to stand. Sit down, Claude. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. I heard you were here. I need to say something, and you need to hear it. Darius moved to stand beside her, but she waved him off gently. This was her moment. I don't love you, she said simply. I'm sorry if that hurts, but it's the truth. I never loved you. When we were teenagers, you were a friend's older brother. When we were young adults, you were my father's choice, not mine. And when you waited patiently for me to come around, what you were really doing was refusing to accept my no. Simone, please, let me finish. When I tried to kill myself, it wasn't because I was unstable or confused. It was because I couldn't see any other way out of a future I found unbearable. A future married to you, living a life that satisfied everyone except me. And the fact that my attempt didn't change anything, that my father and you just waited for me to get over it, told me everything I needed to know about how much my feelings mattered. I can change, Claude said desperately. I'll be different. We can start fresh, build something real. No, Claude. Because even now, even after everything, you're not hearing me. You're negotiating. You're bargaining. You're trying to find the right combination of words that will make me say yes. But there is no combination. There is no version of this where I choose you. Because of him? Claude gestured at Darius. Because he's rich and powerful? Because he listened when I said no the first time. Because he's never tried to convince me I don't know my own mind. Because when I told him about my past, about the suicide attempt, about running away, his response wasn't to fix me or wait for me to get over it. It was to protect me and support whatever I decided. She moved to Darius's side, taking his hand. I love him because he treats me like a person, not a prize to be won. The room fell silent except for the rain against the windows. Finally, Claude stood. He looked diminished somehow, younger and more vulnerable than when he'd arrived. I'm going back to New Orleans tomorrow, he said quietly. My family needs me to help navigate the legal issues. But Simone, if you ever change your mind, if you ever need anything, I won't. Her voice was gentle but absolute. I'm sorry, Claude. I truly am. I'm sorry my father made promises he had no right to make. I'm sorry you invested years in a future I never agreed to. But I can't live my life to fulfill other people's plans for me. I have to live it for myself and for my child. After Claude left, escorted by security back to his rental car, Simone broke down in Darius's arms, not from fear or regret, but from relief, the kind of relief that comes from finally speaking truth that's been trapped inside for years. "It's over," Darius murmured, stroking her hair. "It's really over." "Is it? Your investigation? Antoine's arrest? That might stop them legally? But it doesn't change how they feel, how my father sees this. Give Philippe time. His brother is facing federal charges. His family is in crisis. His political capital is evaporating. Right now, his daughter living happily in Atlanta is the least of his problems. And eventually, when things settle, he'll have a choice. Have a relationship with you and his grandchild, or hold on to pride that serves no one. You think he'll choose us? I think people surprise you when given the chance. And I think a man who's lost as much as Philippe is about to lose might appreciate what he still has left to gain." 3 months later, on a cold February morning, Simone gave birth to a healthy baby girl, 7 pounds, 6 ounces, with her mother's eyes and what the nurses swore was already her father's commanding presence. They named her Naomi Grace Monroe, Naomi meaning pleasantness and grace, because sometimes that's all any of us can hope for. Philippe Dubois sent flowers. Not a visit, not a phone call, but flowers expensive, tasteful, with a card that read simply, "Congratulations, Philippe." It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't acceptance, but it was acknowledgement. And for now, that was enough. Claude didn't send anything, but Simone heard through mutual friends that he'd started dating someone new in New Orleans, a woman who reportedly seemed genuinely interested in him, not forced into his orbit. She hoped it was true. She hoped he'd find what she'd found, a love based on choice rather than obligation. Antoine Rousseau pleaded guilty to money laundering and received 15 years in federal prison. The investigation expanded to include human trafficking connections, drug money, and a web of corruption that reached surprisingly high into Louisiana politics. Philippe Dubois, through careful lawyering and genuine separation from his brother-in-law's criminal enterprises, avoided charges but not scrutiny. The Dubois family's influence in New Orleans diminished significantly. For Darius, life transformed in ways money had never accomplished. The first time Naomi gripped his finger with her tiny hand, he understood what people meant when they talked about purpose beyond profit. The first time she smiled, really smiled. Not just gas, but genuine joy. He felt something crack open in his chest that he hadn't known was closed. 63 years old, changing diapers at 3 a.m., singing lullabies off-key. And he'd never been happier. Simone thrived. The fear that had shadowed her for years finally lifted. She returned to her art curation work, opened a small gallery in Buckhead that specialized in black artists, and slowly began to rebuild a relationship with her mother who, it turned out, had been far more sympathetic to Simone's flight than Philippe had admitted. Jerome, watching Darius with his daughter one evening, laughed and shook his head. "Man, if someone had told me Big Boss Darius would be here wearing baby vomit on a $5,000 suit, singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, I'd have checked them for head trauma." "Shows what you know," Darius replied, adjusting Naomi against his shoulder. "This suit is only $3,000. I've learned to dress down for parenting. You're different, boss. Softer somehow." "Not softer. Just focused on different things. Turns out, conquering real estate markets is easy compared to getting a colicky baby to sleep." But he wasn't softer, not where it mattered. When a business competitor tried to use his new family situation to paint him as distracted, Darius quietly dismantled the man's portfolio with surgical precision. When rumors started circulating about Simone's past, suggesting she'd been a gold digger who trapped an older man, Darius's legal team made it very clear that defamation lawsuits were expensive, protracted, and inevitable. "You can be a father and still be feared," Vincent observed. "Turns out they're not mutually exclusive. They never were. Protection and power serve the same purpose when used correctly." 6 months after Naomi's birth, on a warm August evening, Darius hosted a small gathering at his estate. Friends, business associates, the chosen family he'd built over decades. Simone moved through the crowd with confidence, No longer the scared woman who'd run from New Orleans, but someone who'd found her own power. As the party wound down, Darius stood on his balcony, Naomi sleeping against his chest, watching the Atlanta skyline light up against the night sky. "You thinking about the future?" Simone asked, joining him. "Always. But differently now. Used to think about deals, acquisitions, empire building. Now I'm thinking about college funds, and teaching her to be strong, and making sure she knows she's never property to be negotiated. She'll know. With you as her father, how could she not?" Simone leaned against him, watching their daughter sleep. "Do you ever regret it? Taking on my mess? Fighting my family? Risking everything you'd built? Never. Not once. Not even a little bit." He kissed the top of Simone's head. "You gave me something I didn't know. I needed a reason to build beyond myself. And she?" He looked down at Naomi. "She's proof that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places." That's very philosophical for Big Boss Darius. "I'm 63 and sleep-deprived. Philosophy is all I've got left." They stood there, in comfortable silence. A family built not from arrangements or obligations, but from choice, courage, and the simple belief that love should liberate, not imprison. In New Orleans, Philippe Dubois sometimes looked at photos of his granddaughter on the private Instagram account Simone had given him access to. He never commented, never liked the photos, but he looked, and that was progress. In Atlanta, Darius continued building his empire, but now it was an empire with a nursery, with baby-proofed corners, with a future that extended beyond his own mortality. And, late at night, when Naomi would wake crying, Darius would walk her around the penthouse, telling her stories about her mother's courage, about the importance of choosing your own path, about how sometimes the greatest power is knowing when to fight and when to love. "Don't let anyone tell you what you should be," he'd whisper to his sleeping daughter. "Don't let anyone make you smaller to fit their vision. And never, ever let anyone convince you that love is supposed to feel like a cage." Naomi would make small sounds, already dreaming whatever babies dream. And Big Boss Darius, the man who'd built an empire on being unshakable, would feel his heart crack wide open all over again, the best kind of breaking, the kind that lets more light in. So there you have it, family. Big Boss Darius didn't just protect what he loved, he showed that real power isn't about control, it's about creating space for people to be free. That's the story of how a self-made billionaire at 63 found the one thing money couldn't buy. A family built on choice, not obligation. If this story moved you, if it made you think about love, power, and what it means to fight for what matters, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you thought, and make sure you're subscribed. Because these stories, they're just getting started. Next time, we're diving into something even more intense, more luxurious, more real. Until then, remember, the best things in life aren't taken, they're chosen. And when you find something worth choosing, you protect it with everything you've got. Peace, family. Big Boss Darius will be back.